espouse anti-disestablishmentarianism. He's in his papers.
All right. Good morning. My name is Rivera. I'm a MIR and MPA candidate. I tried choosing a topic that would be correlating different areas of or subject programs that I've taken here at Syracuse, including policy from Maxwell, communications from Newhouse, law from Sukal, and national security from InScale. The result is that efforts to invoke anti-disestablishmentarianism in the United States via social media. Yes, it's a long word in English language. Yes, I love the fact that it is. Simply put, I'll be evaluating the efforts to promote division in the United States using online methods. So, first, we're just going to cover a quick background of social media and of mass media. First, obviously, we're talking about Gutenberg Press, Printing Press. Next, we go into radio, which is Marconi, who actually received a lot of the credit for it, even though Tesla was actually first invented it. Marconi won't get the Nobel Peace Prize, really up to him to get, but he received it. And the U.S. Supreme Court eventually in 1943 reversed it, giving him the credit for the radio invalidations for Tesla, unfortunately, 6 months after his death. Next, we look at television. Some of the notables for television were the 1936 Olympics that were broadcasted live, followed by the moon landing in 1969, which was watched by 500 million people. Internet came next, and originally it was funded by the Department of Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. Later, we looked at some of the simple social media aspects, such as, or programs such as CompuServe, Prodigy, America Online, for those of you who remember 3.5 and 12 years came in the mail. They had some simple forms such as bulletin boards, IM, chat rooms, so on, etc. Definitely where I got my screen name from. We move forward into MySpace and Facebook. Facebook currently holding a significant portion of the market share with approximately 2 billion users. Next, look at some of the vulnerable sectors, personal, corporate, and governmental. On the personal side, the most prudent and most simple method of trying to protect yourself is going to be the firewalls, antivirus, and anti-spyware program. On the corporate side, we're also looking at firewalls and IT defense measures, including certain sectors and divisions within corporations that have those sections of protection. And then as far as the governmental side of it, looking at government systems being the target of foreign states now, organizations and individuals who intend to undermine the sovereignty and security of the United States. There are different types of attackers. I broke them down into 10 different categories. Get more to that if you don't have questions later, but for the sake of this, I guess 100-floor elevator speech, let's list them. We're looking at hackers, lone criminals, malicious insiders, industrial espionage, press, actually the press, organized crime, the police, terrorist organizations, national intelligence organizations, as well as info warriors. Next, we're going to look at cyber warfare. I think a lot of you have a lot of background on this, probably much more than I do. So I'm going to breeze through this and act like I know a lot more than I do. Cyber warfare stems from the concept of 3 distinct methods. Those include radio protect, radio exploit, as well as radio attack. Protect involves creating barriers to defend against different system infiltrations. Radio exploit involves breaching an adversary's defense mechanisms to ascertain private or proprietary information. And then radio attack is an offensive measure against some sort of adversarial entity, whether it's governmental, individual, or otherwise. In October 2011, U.S. Army Cyber Command, whose current strength is approximately 19,000 personnel, was formed, and in 2017, it was ordered to be elevated to the status of full and independent unified combatant command. The intelligence body is improving the cooperation capabilities currently and skills within the civilian institutions and military institutions. The idea behind that being really to take the 2 groups, they can operate seamlessly and complement each other in different functions they'll be handling. The need for such measures requires a close collaboration with Congress for proper legislation, of course, on security matters that and develop protocols. Different types of attacks that there are 3 different types, at least the way I broke it down with 3 different types. First is data destruction, whereas we're looking at Trojans, looking at worms, viruses, etc. Second is data inhibition, which is denial of service attacks, interfering with different systems. One such recent attack actually occurred in 2013 in Korea, whereas they took down the banking system, compromising the nation's ability to actually use their banking system entirely. It resulted in economic damages locally and actually difficulties for businesses and that population to operate in regular form. It demonstrated that the potential is there for it to happen against us in the United States. So defending in depth by implementing redundancy and layering just didn't happen there. There were no protective measures in place. There were no backups in place. Therefore, there was no way to mitigate the threat once it started to occur. The systematic failure resulted in a span of 10 days that they were not able to utilize their systems. Next, and the third one is going to be persuasive campaigns. This is one I kind of took and maybe I took a little bit of liberty with. Persuasive campaigns, social media campaigns, and trolling. This includes the less than eloquent term fake news, which I personally don't like very much, but there it is. Most notably, the majority of current attacks regarding persuasive acts are occurring via social media. Next, we're going to look at legal shifts and concerns. I'm on 15th floor right now. The fluid and rapid evolution of social media attacks have changed a lot of policy laws. Such changes include net neutrality, DMCA, or Digital Millennium Copyright Act, as well as the Immunity Clause, better known as Communications Decency Act, Section 230. Variations of policy enforcement, variations of enforcement levels. Enforcement levels include policy standards and guidelines. The policies are essentially a document that outlines specific requirements or rules that must be met. Standard is typically a collection of system-specific or procedural-specific requirements that everyone must meet, and then guideline is more so a best practice guideline for the industry. So this affects different sections. Of course, looking at companies, we're looking at personnel, so on, etc. So first, we'll look at companies, and as per the, for my law people, as per the by the way, FCC versus AT&T, it held that companies are considered entities and not individuals. As such, litigation against such entities hold corporations community liable rather than liability falling on individuals. It shields those people. Another such case was Zeron versus AOL in 1987, which whereas the 4th District determined that immunity of internet service providers for wrongs committed by their users. This case released ISPs from liability instead permits ISPs to self-govern responsible matter. Specifically, if we look at something recently, YouTube's banned Logan Paul after he posted a video of an individual who committed suicide in a Japanese forest this past year. He was banned and so on, and that was really the act of YouTube, not necessarily banning, because that's legislation that required them to act on their behalf. Next is how it affects individuals. Is that the one? Okay. Efforts to promote division amongst United States citizens have come by way of such platforms as Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, so on, etc. These methods of targeting the decision-making psyche of individuals is a new and powerful tool. And it pits anti-disestablishmentarianism against the rights of those protected by the First Amendment of the Constitution. This might include instigating public debate over such issues as gun rights, police actions, or police-involved shootings, and it's also the use of platforms, flooded social media during the propaganda campaign of 2016 presidential election. Social media is also used as a recruitment tool, as utilized by the Islamic State, who averages 38 well-produced posts per day in multiple languages to increase their numbers throughout the world.
Okay, questions or comments from Robert here on the 75th floor?
So I'm not afraid to admit that I had to Google anti-disestablishment. And it seems like the definition has a specifically religious connotation.
Not necessarily. I mean, it's really much more. It's literally just that, breaking it down. You're looking at an establishment trying to overthrow that establishment. It's the mentality of trying to overthrow that establishment. So in other words, it's simply stated.
Let me help you out.
Sure.
I had to look it up because it was in this paper. Opposition to withdrawal of state support for an institution which is formally aligned with the state. The most common case that is used is being opposed to withdrawal of the Anglican Church from the government of the United Kingdom during their efforts 20 years ago. And that is the definition of the Oxford Dictionary. I just want to throw that in the discussion.
Thank you, sir. I knew that was coming back. Go ahead.
No, did you type it out every time? Or did you copy and paste it?
Yeah, actually, the word itself was only maybe 2 times up. It was less about that. It was just a very, believe it or not, concise way of paragraph of explanation. So that's why it is like that.
Okay, let's hear it from Robert. Good over.
In conclusion, while proponents of stricter guidelines feel that they are advocating the protection of American ideals, detractors ironically hold the same general belief of allowing for an unobstructed acquisition of information and dialogue, though on a globally rather than nationalistic aggregation. Holding firm in our values, such as free speech, should not be exclusive to American citizens, but in our dealings with people throughout the world. The threshold of nefarious conduct versus free speech is blurred. However, the advocating of loss of life and a deliberate attack to undermine an established process such as the democratic process of an election, which is the barometer of the will of the people, must not be tolerated. It is my contention that foreign government espionage, particularly via persuasion, is of paramount importance to the safety and security of lives and property. While many other forms of threats may involve compromise of proprietary information, monetary redirection or losses, and or interfering with system functions, foreign government espionage not only involves all of these areas, but also puts lives in grave danger. And while the success or failure of a private entity is noteworthy, it is minuscule in relation to the threats posed by a state's electronic data or systems being tampered with.